Welcome to the Solid Signal Podcast for the week of December 24th, 2018. That's right, it's December 24th as I record this. And guys, the first thing I'd like to say is that our offices will be closed on Tuesday, December 25th. That's just so that our employees can spend time with their families, celebrate in the way that they enjoy celebrating. And we will be back and 100% strong as ever on Wednesday, December 26th. Not that you really were surprised about that companies are closed on December 25th. I just felt like that little bit of information would be a good way to start out the podcast. The real subject of the podcast this week, though, is that was the year that was. And I'd like to take a look back, perhaps one of many that I'm going to publish on the Solid Signal blog this year, looking back at 2018. 2018 was not one of those watershed years where, a massive amount of hardware comes out and we can't imagine what life was like before, but it was a very important year in a certain sense for some of the things that didn't happen. There were a few important things that did happen, and some of them actually really make a difference. One thing that happened in 2018, and most people aren't even really aware of this, is that the FCC did allow a slight rule change to specifically say that cell boosters can be used for commercial use. Before that, they were saying they could be used for residential use, and they didn't say they couldn't be used for commercial use, but that in 2018, the rule went into effect to say that you absolutely could use a cell booster for a business, and that's a good thing, especially for all of those businesses who weren't 100% sure if they should jump into cell boosters. Spoiler alert, you absolutely should. Some of the more noteworthy things about 2018 were what didn't really happen. AT&T did roll out 5G service in a very limited sense in 2018 because they said they would, and they did. But 5G did not take over the world, partially because the 5G standard still isn't actually finalized. Not all of it is really in place, and we really don't know how that's going to work technologically. I think that it's great to think that we're going to have these cell phones that are going to be able to communicate over extremely high frequencies, and that they're going to be able to do that without having to have batteries the size of briefcases. I just don't know how that's going to work yet. Of course, people said the same thing about 4G when that first came out, and things worked out eventually. Good thing that there's a lot of smart people working on it. This also wasn't the year that DirecTV or Dish went out of business, which, of course, there's always going to be somebody who says that's going to happen. Will we eventually see an end to satellite television? Yeah, I'm sure we will. Eventually, the last satellite's going to go out of service, and I would guess that's about 10 to 15 years. I wouldn't worry about it. As a matter of fact, it's a great time to get into satellite television, especially if you're one of those people who feels like that they're being kind of nickeled and dimed by every single one of these little tiny services that wants to charge them a monthly fee. With your satellite TV subscription, you pay one monthly fee. Often that fee can include internet and phone service, and even better, you get access to all those individual channels that you really want, including the premiums if you pay for them. And you don't have to pay anybody else or see any other subscription kind of nonsense. This wasn't the year that we saw DirecTV roll out its 100% replacement for satellite TV over the internet, as a lot of people said. And I think that that's going to come in 2019, but perhaps not in the form that you expect it to, because I'm not quite sure what giving the entire DirecTV experience over the internet really means. And I'm not sure that anybody who's capable of talking about it publicly does. So that's going to be a hard one to peg, but we'll see something in 2019, I think. This wasn't the year that we saw a new Wi-Fi standard, but we will in 2019. I think that's going to be an important thing. And what is good about 2018 that we did finally see is a new naming scheme. I know that it's not the most important thing, but your 802.11ac router is now known as Wi-Fi 5, which is a little bit easier to understand, and calling it AC was never a good idea because that's another term for alternating current or the power that comes out of your outlet. whoever figured that out was probably just, I don't know, they were way off base, way off base. We saw continued domination of Amazon and Google Home on smart homes, and while that's great, we have accepted smart home technology in, and even people who are resistant to it are liking things like doorbells and app-controlled lights and things like that. But it hasn't really gotten to the point where it's so changed our life that we can't live without it or can't imagine what life was like without it. More and more stuff was voice-controlled over 2018, but I'm not sure that it really was an incredible game changer. The world of antennas did not change much in 2018, I'm afraid to say, because there was no 4K over-the-air television. However, there was an agreement in sort of general by broadcasters that they're going to kind of get started on it in the next year or year and a half, and that they're going to try to have the transition to the next broadcast standard known as ATSC 3 complete by 2025. Is that absolutely going to happen? I don't know. I think a lot of that has to do with politics, which is not something that I delve into at the Solid Signal podcast, but it is worth pointing out that the FCC, the commissioners, are made of political appointees, and that they have a habit of resigning when the world of politics changes. As volatile as things can be in the world of politics lately, I think that's worth pointing out. Overall, though, this was the kind of year you talk about pulling back the bow, or that sort of metaphor. There's a lot of things that are going to happen in 2019 that are going to be very exciting, I think. A lot of stuff to focus on, but what we saw in 2018 was a lot of the prep work, not very interesting stuff, but a lot of the prep work that makes the future possible. I don't know about you, but I personally am really looking forward to year 2019, not just in general in the world of technology, also at the Solid Signal blog and podcast. At the end of 2018, the Solid Signal blog finally finished its long-term evolution, to borrow a term from cellular, that started at the beginning of the year. Not only did we migrate to a new platform, but we migrated to a new server, which is going to give us the ability to serve about 900,000 pages a month, which is an increase over where we were. We were starting to choke at about 175 or even 150,000 a month. So we're out here able to serve you with the best content. Keep coming back to blog.solidsignal.com. Keep listening to the Solid Signal podcast. And of course, keep shopping at solidsignal.com, the great company that keeps the lights on at the Solid Signal blog and podcast, pays my salary, and of course has the best in not only consumer but commercial technology. That's about it for the podcast this week. Next week will be the last podcast of the year. It might be the first podcast of next year, depending on how I count it. Not super important. Anyway, that's about it for me for this week. Thanks for listening in this extra long and rambling podcast, and I'll see you again soon on the Solid Signal podcast.